Los Angeles, a city of dreams, where the streets hum with ambition, wealth, and secrets buried beneath glitzy facades. For Emma Carter, a young woman in her mid-20s, this city was both a paradise and a prison. She lived a privileged life, raised by Catherine Carter, a powerful and wealthy businesswoman who had given her everything: a luxurious home, elite education, and a future without limits. From the outside, Emma's world was perfect. But deep inside, something had always felt off. For as long as she could remember, shadows of forgotten memories haunted her. She would wake up in cold sweats from nightmares, images of a dark, damp room, a rusty chain rattling, and a woman's distant screams. The visions never made sense, but they left her with a gnawing fear she couldn't explain. Catherine always brushed off Emma's concerns, telling her she had an overactive imagination. "You were a sickly child when I adopted you," Catherine would say, stroking her hair like a loving mother. "The doctors warned me you might struggle with bad dreams. But those are just dreams, sweetheart. That's all they are." But Emma knew they weren't just dreams. One evening, while clearing out an old storage room in their mansion, Emma stumbled upon an antique wooden chest she had never seen before. Something about it sent chills down her spine. As she pried it open, the scent of aged paper and dust filled the air. Inside, there were old keepsakes, letters, photographs, and medical documents. One particular item caught her eye, a faded Polaroid of a little girl. Her heart stopped. The girl in the picture was her. Same dark brown hair, same piercing green eyes. But at the bottom of the photo, a name was scrawled in childlike handwriting: Sophie. Emma stared at the name. It didn't make sense. She had never been called Sophie in her life. A deep, unsettling panic crept over her. She flipped through the other documents in the chest and found a missing persons flyer from 15 years ago. Her blood ran cold. The flyer was for a missing girl named Sophie Miller, kidnapped from her backyard in Chicago at the age of 6. The description was an exact match to Emma. Her breath hitched. Her hands trembled. Was this a mistake? A terrible coincidence? Frantically, she searched for more answers. And then, she found the final piece of evidence: a birth certificate. It wasn't the name Emma Carter written on it. It was Sophie Miller. Emma staggered backward, the world spinning around her. Her chest tightened, heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. She felt suffocated, like she had been living in a beautiful cage, unaware of its bars. Who was she? Who had raised her? And most terrifying of all, if Catherine Carter wasn't her real mother, then who had stolen her? Emma's hands clenched into fists. Her mind screamed for answers, but the truth she was about to uncover would be far more horrifying than she ever imagined. Emma tried to convince herself it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe the picture belonged to someone else. Maybe she was reading too much into it. But the more she tried to dismiss it, the more her unease grew. She had lived in the Carter mansion for as long as she could remember. Catherine was her mother. That was an undeniable fact, wasn't it? Then why did she feel like a stranger in her own life? The first real crack in her reality appeared the next morning at breakfast. Sitting across from Catherine, she studied the woman who had raised her. Tall, elegant, poised, always perfectly composed. The kind of woman who could silence a room with just a glance. Emma had never questioned the coldness beneath her mother's kindness before. But now, every word Catherine spoke felt rehearsed, calculated. "Why are you staring at me like that, darling?" Catherine asked, her voice smooth but sharp. Emma hesitated. Should she ask? Could she? "I found something yesterday," she finally said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "A picture of me, but with another name." For a split second, just a fraction of a second, Catherine's expression changed. It was so fast that Emma almost missed it, but it was there. A flicker of something, unreadable. Then Catherine laughed softly, setting down her teacup. "Oh, sweetheart, you've always been so imaginative," she said, her smile warm but her eyes distant. "That picture must be from one of those silly plays you used to put on as a child. Remember? You loved pretending to be different people." Emma's stomach twisted. She never remembered pretending to be someone named Sophie. And the missing persons flyer? The birth certificate? That wasn't a game. Catherine reached out, gently squeezing Emma's hand. "You worry too much," she said in a soothing tone. "Why don't we go shopping today? Buy you something new to take your mind off all this nonsense." Emma forced a nod, but her mind was already racing. She was lying. Emma knew it now. She had seen it in her mother's eyes. Catherine Carter, one of the most powerful women in Los Angeles, was hiding something. And if she was willing to lie so smoothly, so convincingly, what else was she capable of? The first real red flag came later that day. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the documents she had found, so she decided to do some digging. If she really was Sophie Miller, there had to be proof somewhere. A hospital record, a DNA test, something. So, while Catherine was out, Emma went into her mother's study, a place she had rarely been allowed to enter. The massive mahogany desk was locked, but Emma knew where the spare key was hidden. She had seen the housekeeper use it before. Her hands trembled as she slid the key into the drawer and turned it. Inside, she found several passports. Different names. Different identities. Some even had her picture on them. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She flipped through them, her breath catching in her throat. What the hell was this? Then she found something even worse, a burner phone. It had only a few contacts saved. No names, just numbers. One of them had a message thread still open. Emma clicked on it. Unknown number. She's asking questions. Catherine. She won't find anything. I made sure of it. Unknown number. What if she does? Catherine. Then we handle it. Emma's blood ran cold. Handle it? Her hands were shaking now. She knew she should put everything back, pretend she had never seen any of it. But before she could move, she heard the front door slam shut. Catherine was home. For the first time in her life, Emma felt genuine fear in her own house. She shoved the phone back into the drawer, locked it, and darted out of the office, barely making it back to her room before Catherine's heels clicked against the marble floor outside. Emma sat on her bed, her heart hammering. This wasn't just about a missing flyer anymore. This was a conspiracy. And if Catherine knew Emma was getting too close to the truth, she might not be as safe as she thought. Emma's world began to unravel the moment she found the photograph. The image of her younger self, Sophie Miller, stared back at her, a ghost from a past she couldn't remember. The name on the back of the photo, Sophie Miller, missing, burned into her mind like a brand. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a coincidence. This was her. But how? Emma spent hours scouring the internet, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she searched for answers. She combed through missing persons databases, cross-referencing photos, dates, and locations. The evidence was undeniable. Sophie Miller had been kidnapped from her backyard in Chicago 15 years ago. She was 6 years old, and she looked exactly like Emma. Her hands trembled as she read the details of Sophie's disappearance. The little girl had been playing outside when she vanished without a trace. No witnesses, no suspects, just a family left broken, searching for answers that never came. Emma's chest tightened as she stared at the screen. If she was Sophie Miller, then who was Catherine Carter? The woman who had raised her, given her everything. Was she a savior or a thief? She needed to know the truth. Emma turned to the only person she could trust, Lucas Reed. Lucas had been her closest friend for years, a private investigator with a knack for uncovering secrets. When she showed him the photo and the missing persons report, his expression turned grave. "If this is true," Lucas said, his voice low, "then your entire life is a lie." Emma's stomach churned. She couldn't accept that, not yet. She needed proof. Hard evidence. That night, while Catherine was at a charity event, Emma broke into her mother's office. The room was a fortress of mahogany and steel, a reflection of Catherine's power and control. Emma's hands shook as she rifled through drawers and files, searching for anything that could confirm her suspicions. And then she found it. A hidden compartment in the desk revealed a stack of documents, black market adoption records, financial transactions, and coded messages. Emma's heart raced as she flipped through the pages. The truth was worse than she could have imagined. Catherine Carter wasn't just a wealthy woman who had rescued her. She was part of a network, a sophisticated operation that trafficked children to wealthy buyers. Emma's file was among them, detailing her acquisition and the hefty price Catherine had paid for her. Emma's vision blurred as she read the words. She had been stolen, sold, and Catherine had kept her. But why? Before she could process the horror, a notification popped up on her phone. It was a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, stop looking. Asterisk. Emma's blood ran cold. Someone knew what she was doing, and they were watching. Emma and Lucas weren't the only ones looking for answers. From the moment Emma started digging into Sophie Miller's disappearance, someone had been watching. At first, it was subtle, a flicker of movement in her peripheral vision, a car idling too long outside her apartment. But soon, the warnings became impossible to ignore. Her apartment was broken into one night while she was out. The door was left ajar, the lock picked with precision. Inside, her belongings were tossed haphazardly, drawers emptied, furniture overturned. But nothing was stolen, except her laptop. Emma's hands shook as she surveyed the damage. Whoever did this wasn't after valuables. They were sending a message. The next day, a black SUV appeared outside her workplace. It followed her as she drove home, maintaining a careful distance. When she tried to confront it, the vehicle sped away, disappearing into the labyrinth of Los Angeles streets. Then came the texts. Anonymous numbers flooded her phone with chilling messages. Asterisk, stop digging. Asterisk, asterisk, you don't know what you're messing with. Asterisk, asterisk, drop it, or disappear. Asterisk. Emma showed the messages to Lucas, who frowned deeply. This isn't just some random threat, he said. They're scared of what you might find. But the final blow came when Catherine Carter vanished. One moment, Catherine was scheduled to appear at a high-profile charity gala. The next, she was gone. No phone calls, no credit card activity, no trace. It was as if she had been erased from existence. Emma's fear turned to desperation. If Catherine was gone, did that mean the people behind Sophie's kidnapping were tying up loose ends? Was she next? Determined to track down her mother, or at least uncover the truth, Emma and Lucas followed a lead to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The building was a relic of Los Angeles's industrial past, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. Inside, they found a nightmare. Dozens of missing child reports were pinned to the walls, each one a haunting reminder of lives stolen. Documents detailing the sale of children to wealthy buyers were scattered across a rusted table. And at the bottom of the pile, Emma found her own file. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. There were photos of her as a child, medical records, and a detailed account of her acquisition. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Before she could process the horror, Lucas grabbed her arm. "We need to go. Now." Footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Emma's heart raced as armed men flooded the room, their faces obscured by masks. One of them muttered into a phone, "She knows too much." Lucas shoved Emma into a dark corner, his voice low and urgent. "Stay down. Don't move." The men moved with military precision, sweeping the warehouse with flashlights. Emma held her breath, her pulse pounding in her ears. But as the men drew closer, Lucas made a decision. "Run," he whispered, shoving her toward a side door. "I'll hold them off." Emma hesitated, but Lucas's expression was firm. "Go." She bolted, her legs carrying her through the maze of corridors and out into the night. Behind her, she heard shouts, the sound of a struggle, and then a gunshot. Her heart shattered, but she couldn't stop. Not now. Emma disappeared into the shadows, clutching the files to her chest. She was no longer just a woman searching for answers. She was a target, and the truth she carried could destroy everything. Emma and Lucas barely escaped the warehouse with their lives. The sound of gunfire still echoed in Emma's ears as they fled into the night, the stolen files clutched tightly to her chest. Lucas was bleeding from a graze on his arm, but he insisted they keep moving. "They'll come after us," he said, his voice tight with pain. "We can't stop." Emma's mind raced as they drove through the darkened streets of Los Angeles. The files they had taken were a Pandora's box of horrors, names, dates, transactions, and photographs that exposed a sprawling network of corruption. But one name stood out among the rest, circled in red ink and marked with a single word: mastermind. They needed a safe place to regroup, to plan their next move. Lucas suggested an old safe house he used for high-profile cases, a nondescript apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It was there, under the dim glow of a single lamp, that Emma finally opened the files. The name at the center of it all was one she recognized. Lucas Reed. Her heart stopped. She stared at the documents, her hands trembling as she pieced together the truth. Lucas wasn't just a private investigator. He wasn't just her friend. He was the architect of the entire operation, the man who had orchestrated the kidnapping of Sophie Miller and countless other children. Emma's stomach churned as she remembered the way he had always been there for her, the way he had encouraged her to dig deeper. He hadn't been helping her uncover the truth. He had been controlling it. The sound of the door opening snapped her out of her thoughts. Lucas stepped inside, his face pale but composed. He froze when he saw the files spread out on the table, his eyes narrowing as he realized what she had discovered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that," he said, his voice calm but edged with something darker. Emma's heart pounded. You did this? You took me? You took all those children?" Lucas didn't deny it. "It's not that simple, Emma. You don't understand the bigger picture." "The bigger picture," she spat, her voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed lives. You destroyed my life." Lucas's expression hardened. "I gave you a better life. Catherine raised you in luxury. You had everything you could ever want. I didn't want this." Emma screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted my family, my real family." Lucas stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just walk away from this? You think you can expose me and live to tell the tale?" Emma backed away, her mind racing. She had to get out. She had to run. But before she could move, Lucas pulled a gun from his jacket, aiming it squarely at her chest. "You were never supposed to find out," he said, his voice cold. "But now you have to choose. Forget everything and walk away, or die like the others." Emma's breath hitched. She was trapped. But then she noticed something in Lucas's eyes, a flicker of hesitation, of guilt. It was all the opening she needed. With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged at him, knocking the gun from his hand. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs, fists flying, breaths ragged. Emma fought with everything she had, fueled by years of pain and betrayal. The gun went off. For a moment, everything was still. Then Lucas slumped to the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Emma stood, trembling, her hands stained with his blood. She grabbed the files and ran, disappearing into the night. The truth was out, but the cost was higher than she ever imagined. The world believed Emma Carter was dead. A car accident had been reported on the outskirts of Los Angeles, the vehicle engulfed in flames. The news outlets ran the story with somber headlines. Heiress Emma Carter, daughter of philanthropist Catherine Carter, presumed dead in tragic crash. But Emma was far from gone. In the shadows, she worked tirelessly, her face hidden beneath a hood, her identity erased. The files she had stolen from the warehouse, and from Lucas, were her weapon. They contained names that would shake the foundations of power. Politicians, CEOs, law enforcement officials, all complicit in the trafficking network that had stolen her childhood. One by one, she exposed them. Anonymous emails sent to journalists. Encrypted files leaked to activists. Evidence delivered to the doorsteps of federal investigators. The world began to take notice. Scandals erupted. Arrests were made. The once untouchable elite found themselves facing justice. But Emma wasn't done. There was one name left. One person who had orchestrated it all, who had stolen her life and countless others. Catherine Carter. Tracking her down wasn't easy. Catherine had gone underground, her wealth and connections allowing her to vanish without a trace. But Emma was relentless. She followed the money, the whispers, the faint trail of breadcrumbs left behind. Finally, she found her. Catherine was living under an alias in a secluded villa in the Swiss Alps. The woman who had once been a pillar of society now looked frail, her sharp edges softened by fear. When Emma stepped into the room, Catherine's eyes widened in shock. "Emma," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're alive." Emma didn't respond. She simply stood there, her gaze cold and unyielding. The woman who had raised her, who had lied to her for years, was now just a stranger. Why? Emma finally asked, her voice steady. Why did you take me? Catherine hesitated, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I couldn't have children of my own, she said quietly. I wanted a daughter, someone to carry on my legacy. You didn't want a daughter, Emma snapped. You wanted a possession, something to control. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but Emma felt no sympathy. The woman who had once seemed so powerful, so invincible, was now just a broken shell. You took everything from me, Emma said, her voice low and fierce. My family, my name, my life. And now, I'm taking it back. Catherine opened her mouth to speak, but the words never came. A single gunshot echoed through the villa. Emma stood over Catherine's lifeless body, her hands steady, her heart cold. She had no regrets. The woman who had stolen her life was gone, and with her, the last remnants of Emma's past. But the fight wasn't over. Emma disappeared into the night, her face hidden, her identity erased. The world would never know the truth about her, about Sophie Miller, but they would know her work. They would know the names she had exposed, the lives she had saved, the justice she had delivered. The screen fades to black. The truth is out. But at what cost? Emma Carter is gone. Sophie Miller is gone. And in their place stands a shadow, a nameless, faceless force, forever watching, forever fighting. Because some secrets are too dangerous to bury, and some truths are worth destroying everything for.